Hello, I'm Keith.M. So how many people here have ever tried to memorize anything? Show of hands. Now how many of you have failed to memorize what you set out to memorize? If you raised your hand for the last question, it's probably because you're going about memorizing the wrong way. Joshua Foer, in his book, Moonwalking with Einstein, The Art and Science of Memorizing Everything, says, the human brain is maladaptive in our contemporary information age. This is because the human brain isn't designed to store abstract concepts. What it's built for is to store sensory information. So the trick to learning anything is to combine it with vivid sensory images. So one way to do this is with mnemonic devices, which is any tool or technique that helps to learn to memorize. So, as Dr. Gregory Lane says, mnemonics can help accelerate the rate at which new information is acquired and improve formal reasoning, which is very important for public speaking, because as you learned reading the textbook, a poor thought out speech is often a poor speech. So over the last 2 weeks, I've spent several hours reading different textbooks and articles, and I'm going to present my findings with you here today. And during the course of the speech, I'm going to discuss mnemonic history, elaborate encoding, and how to apply these techniques. So let's begin with mnemonic history. So in the year, around the year 500 BC, the Greek poet Simonides of Ceos was asked to attend a party. And while he was there, he was summoned outside by two messengers. And the moment he left, the palace in which the party was attended collapsed and killed everyone inside. So after struggling to remove all the rubble and finding the bodies, they were unidentifiable. And it was left to Simonides, who attended the party, to identify everyone who was in attendance. So the way he did this was by memorizing where everyone had been sitting. And he realized at that moment that by memorizing where everyone was, he was able to recall who was in the attendance. And this was the birth of the first memory technique, the memory palace. So after this, the study of mnemonics became very big, and almost every educated man had studied it. And the main textbook was written between 86 to 82 BC, and it was titled Rhetorica de Perennium, and it was written by an anonymous Latin author. Until this day, this is considered the Bible by mnemonists, because it contains all the classical mnemonic techniques. So after this, the Gutenberg press was invented, and people began to more easily offset the information they had to memorize onto printed media. And this devalued memorization. People no longer put such emphasis on memorizing, and they shifted more towards valuing being able to look up information. However, during the 1800s and the 1900s, mnemonics and memorization in general shifted back into focus as people began to repackage old information to sell to doctors and businessmen who were required to know a lot of information and to memorize people's faces and names and things like that. And in the year 1991, Tony Buzan established the World Memory Championship, which is held till this day. So now that we know a bit about the history, let's look at elaborate encoding. Now, elaborate encoding is combining new information with vivid sensory information so as to make it easily rememberable. So, Dr. Kenneth Higby states in his book, Memory, How It Works and How to Improve It, that elaboration helps bridge helps create meaningful associations between what is to be learned and what is already known. So there are several techniques to do this, and one of the main ones is chunking. And that's where you take seemingly arbitrary information and you break it down into more meaningful chunks. So let's say you had a string of letters that was THISSPELLSHELLO. That would be very hard to remember if somebody just spat that at you. But if you break it down into the words this spells and hello, it becomes much more easy to remember. So after this, there's another technique, which is a pretty mainstream technique, which is called the PEG system. And what the PEG system is you take time to memorize things that can be easily visualized, as Higby says, vivid concrete nouns. And then you attach new information to them. So, for example, you can associate the numbers 2 with snow and the number 10 with ice cream cones. And then if someone tells you, you had your presentation is 210, instead of trying to remember that abstract number, you just remember at a later date, in your mind, a room filled with snow and ice cream cones. And then you're much more easy to recall that. So, following this is the last of the main techniques, which is already mentioned previously, the memory palace. And what that is taking as Joshua Foer says it in his book, a place that is easily visualized in the mind's eye and which is well known, and storing images which represent what you would want to know in it. So essentially what you do is you take some place like your house, right? In which everyone can visualize walking into their house, and then you go to the next room after that, and you take your information and you store it there in very logical ways. So, for example, let's say you're giving a speech and you want to memorize your topics and points. You can start out by looking at your house and then picturing the first thing you have to say, and you walk into the next room and you might see a Joshua that you know standing in front of a table and a picture of art, and then you know, oh, Joshua Foer, he wrote the book Moonwalking with Einstein, the art and science of memorizing everything. So that's the way you do it, and it becomes much more easy to remember information. So now that we know the main techniques, let's look at how let's look at how to apply it. So one of the main ways to apply it, and the most obvious ways, as Higby states, is naturally ordered material. So historical dates and such, where it's already in a natural order for you. You don't have to think it up. So let's say you wanted to remember that between 86 and 82 BC, the Rhetorica ad Herennium was written. You might visualize in your mind a palace, and with a CPU that runs on x86 architecture, if you were a computer technician, which is something you already know and is very easily visualized to you. And then next to that, you put the number 2 and a giant book with the words Rhetorica ad Herennium next to it. And then you remember, oh, it was written 86 to 82. So that's one way to apply the techniques. And another way is, as I already mentioned, when it comes to writing and presenting a speech, it's very easy to take the key words that you would present, order them chronologically, turn them into vivid images, and then store them inside a memory palace, which is what I did to present this speech to you guys. So, finally, the art of mnemonics is essentially studying how to learn. And if you study this, you can learn any skill you set out to learn. So, in summation, mnemonics have a well-established and researched history. They can be used to learn anything, and they are very useful tools for public speakers. So, what will you do? Thank you.